Is Texas back? Is a question I've never asked. Is Texas back? Is a question that we're not going to ask on this show. It is largely intellectually bankrupt. So here's what we do ask on this show. Where is Texas? In the grand scheme of things, if you've got a 1 to 130, best programs to worst programs, where is Texas? And if you believe, like I do, that they do belong at or near the top of the sport, if all things are humming, if all cylinders are being clicked on, then what does it take for them to get there? Well, I want you to go back with me. It's not too long ago, and I want to throw a name at you. Scott Woodward. What do you think about Scott Woodward? Well, 99% of you probably don't know the name. Our folks down in Baton Rouge certainly know that name, and maybe some hardcore SEC fans do. The folks in College Station do too. Scott Woodward is now the athletic director at Louisiana State University. He is a homegrown product. He is from Baton Rouge. They love him there. He is essentially the antithesis of the athletic director that they had in there before, who went by the name of Joe Oliva. So LSU, for a while, they looked good on the surface, and that's what they were. They were good. The problem was greatness was in the neighborhood, just up the road in Tuscaloosa, and in any given year elsewhere in the SEC. So LSU could not get over that crimson hump, and therefore they couldn't get to Atlanta, and therefore they couldn't fulfill their ultimate goal of winning national championships. And you always thought, oh, it's the head coach's fault. Oh, we don't have a good enough roster. And everyone wanted to look at all of these different elements of the program that they thought was the separation. But what you didn't know is behind the scenes, their athletic department, if it wasn't a mess, it was certainly disconjointed. And there was a lot of friction where there shouldn't be friction. And then Joe Oliva's out, and they go get Scott Woodward. And if you ask folks at LSU, what was the key to your success, ultimately up to and including winning a national championship last year, they don't start with Ed Orgeron. They don't start with some transfer. They don't start pointing you to any one recruiting class. They don't even start talking about their facilities. They start talking about Scott Woodward. Because once they got that block in place, then everything else just started to flow a lot more easily and a lot more freely. Well, here was the problem. The problem at Texas now is they've kind of been in the same boat. And the problem, just like with LSU, is Texas hasn't been bad. They haven't been terrible. They've been good. But good enough is only enough until greatness enters the picture. And Oklahoma has been a great program. And obviously, nationally, you've had enough other great programs to where if you're merely good, doesn't matter what your facilities look like, doesn't matter how good your resources are, if your on-field product and if your program is operating merely at the level of good, then it's not going to be good enough, nor should it be good enough. And so a couple of weeks ago, we had the interview with Matthew McConaughey. He talked about Chris Del Conte. That's the current athletic director at Texas. And he spoke glowingly of Chris Del Conte. Wasn't the first time I'd heard someone say that. Probably the most reputable, recognizable name that I had heard talk up Chris Del Conte. So, like you normally do when someone talks someone up like that, you just kind of jot it down in the back of your mind. I know the name Chris Del Conte. I can't tell you that I had done a whole lot of research on him until then. So I store it away. Then Taylor Estes from our Horns 24/7 site gets in touch with me, says, Chris Del Conte wants to do a live virtual chat with the fans. 24/7 Sports account, YouTube, open it up, let's do it. So we did it. And I was working out the other day as that was going on live, and I was listening to Chris Del Conte, and it struck me so much I went back and listened to it a second time. A lot of athletic directors are loosely aware of what goes on with any given sport in their athletic department. And they can give you the talking points, but they're not intimately familiar. Truth be told, fans, a lot of hardcore fans know more about the programs on a day-to-day basis than the athletic directors do because they got so much on their plate. Well, that was not Chris Del Conte. Chris Del Conte was talking in very, very vivid detail about the separation between where Texas is, where they have been, where they need to be. That dude's throwing out offensive linemen in the draft statistics like he runs a trivia challenge every Saturday night in his backyard. And so that struck me too. Because the guy said all the right things. Now, I don't know. I've never met Chris Del Conte, so I still don't know anything about him. I'm taking all this in, right? And so he was very in-depth. He was very honest. He talked about the roster. I'll tell you what really struck me is he talked about what Tom Herman inherited, what the process is to go from where they were to where they want to be. And whereas not everyone, a lot of other people, when that Sugar Bowl win over Georgia happened, up to and including the starting quarterback of that team, wanted to shout, "We're back. Texas is back." Chris Del Conte had a different take. And had I thought better of it, I would have clipped it for you tonight. But essentially what he said was, he said, You know, I'm paraphrasing. We had a nice, solid first year, second year, all of a sudden we have this occurrence that happens. And just kind of a confluence of events lead us to the Sugar Bowl. And we get a big win over Georgia. Everyone thinks we're back. In reality, that was a misrepresentation of where we were in our climb back to hopefully the top of the sport, where we got there, and then the next year we don't match that, and we quote unquote only have a nice bowl win. I think it was the Alamo Bowl over Utah, but everyone thinks we take a step back. And he's saying, no, it's not a step back. It's just we took this leap forward record-wise that wasn't truly indicative of where we were as a program. So anyway, I hear all that. And then I'm doing some more research on Chris Del Conte. And that's when I went to our Horns 24/7 site today. They did something really well. They did it really, really well. It's well put together. It's well thought out. If you ever want to know what the health of your program is at any given time, find out what people think about the athletic director. And I'm not talking about people in the media. I'm talking about people who are on the ground day to day. They have a vested interest in the athletic department and the success of that program, either as a fan, as a booster, as a supporter, or in the cases of the people I'm about to read you select quotes from, people who cover on the ground the program from a very, very close proximity day-to-day basis. Bobby Burton is the publisher of Horns 24/7. And these are quotes. Basically, they asked themselves, let's rank the job that Chris Del Conte has done so far at Texas. Bobby Burton, he has not rankled the wrong alumni. He's raised funds at a record rate while starting construction projects that have been needed for years. Chip Brown, all the money Chris Del Conte has raised for the most sweeping upgrade of athletic facilities in school history, as well as a complete makeover of UT football game days. I'm going to get back to that in a second because that has been a big point of contention for people at Texas. He also responds to endless questions on Twitter. He holds town hall meetings every February to explain the athletic department budget. He answers questions from those in the audience. Jeff Howe, senior writer here, really hits on something well. He's been exactly what the athletic department needed in terms of pay close attention. This is what they dealt with at LSU. Mending fences with a group of fans that by large, for lack of a better term, felt disenfranchised and disconnected from the university in the decade. He didn't say 10 months. He said decade leading up to Del Conte's arrival. One could argue the university's ability to connect with the common fan has never been better. Here's the money quote. Del Conte has either given or is giving Tom Herman everything he could possibly need in order to compete at a championship level. Taylor Estes, Chris Del Conte has done more in 2.5 years than the previous 3 ADs had accomplished in more than a decade. This sounds so much. In some cases, it almost sounds like they plagiarized quotes from people that I talked to at LSU during the Joe Oliva days. And then when he was out and Scott Woodward came in, this is what happened behind the scenes at LSU. LSU just went on to win a national championship. This is certainly not the time nor the place to predict Texas in the next 12 months, 24 months to win a national championship. What I'm telling you is there was a lot of rearranging of deck chairs. It felt like out there for a long time. This is what you have to do. Sometimes you have to go through the painful process of just gutting things. Now, you never have to start truly from the ground and rebuild at Texas. But now what's happening? What's happening is a lot of folks who are very instrumental in the success of that program, who felt disenfranchised by the former administration, are now back at the table, just like what's happened at LSU. Let me tell you what else happened at LSU. What happened at LSU is the folks who didn't need to be involved in the process, or the folks who were halfway pulling for the purple and gold, and then the other arm was pulling for their own self-interest, they were either set straight or they were shown the door. You don't hear about this because these are not names that would garner headlines. But they got the folks out of the way that were in the way in Baton Rouge, and they got folks in place that are all on the freight train moving the same direction. And that's what Texas athletics has to be, and that's what Texas football needs to be. Now, right at this moment, you don't look at Texas in fear. They know that. But here's what we do know now. Now that we're hearing from people on the ground, now that we're hearing from people who are well connected at Texas, okay, to a man and to a woman out there, they tell you, okay, there were excuses. There was this excuse behind the scenes, that excuse behind the scenes. Well, now game day atmosphere is fixed, got record-breaking donations. We've got facilities going up, an overhaul the likes of which we've never seen here in Texas, mind you, where they pride themselves on such things. What we know now, and if you're watching on YouTube, you see the picture at the bottom of the screen, that's Tom Herman. What we know now is all excuses are off the table. and we get to find out, is that the right guy? Because if he's not the right guy, they'll find the right guy, and Texas becomes a much, much, much more attractive program for pretty much anyone they want to go get at this point. But that's what I'm most excited to find out about. In the coming year or two, you find out Tom Herman's made staff changes. Tom Herman has gotten what he thinks is the best nucleus of a staff in there to win. The athletic directors walked in and just made sure, okay, from this point forward, if we got a 7-5 season on the board, if we got an 8-4 season on the board and we're underachieving, we know it's solely an in the coaching department problem because it's not me anymore. I did my job. Now they got to do their job. That's all you can ask for as a Texas fan right now.